Welcome to the Sara Finkelstein Show, where the next 10 minutes can change your life. Also on Spotify, Soundcloud, and iHeartRadio. Here's Sara.
You know, this is the time of year when people make their New Year's resolutions. And your resolutions may have to do with physical health, family, relationships, and of course, finances. So I have to ask you, are you saving money? Are you saving for your future? And if so, are you saving enough? I came across an article recently from Yahoo Finance with some statistics, and I'd like to share them with you. Some of them are really quite enlightening. Did you know that the national average for an interest-bearing checking account is 0.07%? That's less than 1%, way less than 1%. And did you know that the national average of interest on a savings account is 0.4%? Again, less than 1%. And the national average for a money market account is 0.59%. Better, but still less than 1%. And the national average on a bank CD, a certificate of deposit, varies from 0.23% all the way up to 1.7%. So that's more than 1%. But let me ask you, how long does it take for 1% to double in value? If you've heard me talk about the rule of 72 in the past, then you know that it would take 72 years for your money to double if your money is growing at 1%. But as we've seen in some scenarios, it doesn't even earn 1%. When you're saving money for your future, you want to have a gauge of how well your money will be growing. At what interest rate will it be growing? Because for many of us, we don't have a whole lot of 72 years to wait for our money to double. And if you've heard me talk about the rule of 72 in the past, you also know that that rule can be used to figure out how much money you will need down the road because of inflation. So let me ask you, do you have an emergency fund? I certainly hope so. And if you don't, what is the purpose of having an emergency fund? Well, the purpose of an emergency fund is to cover those unexpected bills that might come your way. Like, for example, if you need to, say, replace your tires or replace your air conditioning, those are emergencies that are not anticipated. And the benefit of having an emergency fund is so that you don't have to use credit cards and rack up interest rates. So how is your emergency fund doing? By the way, before you start to invest money, you should have an emergency fund set up. And for most people, an emergency fund should cover your expenses for 3 to 6 months. So let's take a look at some other statistics. 47% of Americans cite the cost of living as their biggest obstacle to saving money. The cost of living is their biggest obstacle to saving money. And what I have to say to that is that oftentimes people spend money without thinking. If we're driving around town, doing errands or going to work and back home, oftentimes people will stop for a cup of coffee, whatever hits their fancy and spending more than they should be spending based on their income level and their expenses. Did you know that 22% of people report being completely satisfied with their savings? That means that almost 80% of people are not satisfied with their current savings level. And 40% of women are completely dissatisfied with their savings, as opposed to only 28% of men in that same scenario. And here's a big one. 33% of the respondents couldn't cover bills for even 1 month if they lost their income. Now that's huge. And therefore, the importance of having and funding an emergency fund. Nearly half of adults report their income just about matches their expenses, while about 3 in 10 say their monthly expenses exceed their monthly income. Wow, doesn't that sound like trouble right around the corner? Having to use credit cards makes this all possible. People want instant gratification. They want what they want, and they want it now. Back in the old days, before we had credit cards, what did people do? They used layaway plans and put money aside each week, each month, towards a purchase of their choice. So they had to wait until they had enough money to get delivery of the product or item that they were saving for. About 40% of Americans say they would cut their expenses when their income exceeded, forgive me. About 40% of Americans say they would cut spending when expenses exceed income, while 26% would dip into their savings. 58% of Americans say they know their net worth, while 21% say they do not, and 21% are not sure. And this is frightening. Are you sitting down? The median retirement account balance in the United States is only $87,000. So if you retire at, say, age 60, and you live another 30 years and you make it to age 90, how long is that $87,000 going to go? How long will it last? We all need to plan and plan appropriately so that we can have a carefree, worry-free, and happy retirement. And that takes work, and it takes tweaking, and it takes monitoring your expenses. Most people do not have a budget that is on paper. It's not written down. And therefore, it's so easy to spend money where you may not need to spend money or shouldn't spend money because there are priorities. If you have certain priorities, you may need to make certain sacrifices. And instant gratification is a deterrent to reaching your financial goals. So when do we plan for retirement? We have to save for retirement through vehicles like IRAs, 401k plans, and so on. But in order to get to retirement, we absolutely must save for that. And we need to have that money last for the rest of our lives once we retire. Most people find it challenging leaving a job, leaving a paycheck, and going on Social Security, which for most of us does not cut it. It's not going to be enough income to replace the income that we had from a job. So New Year's resolutions, great time to sit down and plan for your financial future. And if you'd like to get my newsletter, just text me at 561-302-5760.
Knowledge is power, but only when you implement what you've learned to your own benefit. Tune in next time for even more powerful tips on the Sara Finkelstein Show.